Yet, everyone, welcome to today's Sihasin Hour. We are honored to have Lynda Lovejoy here with us today. Lynda was a candidate for Navajo Nation President, and this is, of course, an election year. And this is the beginning of Women's History Month. So we wanted to invite a Navajo woman onto Sihasin Hour to kind of talk about what it was like to make history. So we're very, very excited. Lynda was a very successful candidate for president and was the first woman to make it through to the primaries or past the primaries in the presidential election at Navajo Nation. So we're so honored to have you here with us, Lynda. Thank you so much for joining us today. And usually we just kind of start out with introductions. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself briefly in Navajo, and if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll jump into our discussion. So, Ethel Branshin Chef, Bimpatwani Nishlet, Nakai Bashachin, Sinajani Dashache, Nakai Dashanala, Sezizi Denasha. And I'm actually speaking to you today from Tucson, despite the photo in the background. We are on a holiday for a week at Yehal Nido. And so getting a little bit of sunshine and playground time for my small son. he may join us here at some point during the show to say hello. Yeah, that's me, and happy to be here with you this morning. And I'll pass things over to Lynda.
Thank you, Ethel, for asking me to be on your Sihasin Hour program. And Sheya Tsahiskinin Shringo Kia Ani Bashashin Sanahapesni Edashache Twadachini Edashanala Is Ozandeshki Joe Yisinasha Ako Bahensen Shadeja di Quas our Echnigo da Yojo Ako the Quigoshin Dasadotsi. And so anyway, I'm thankful that you have me on your program. I think your program is just phenomenal. Your program allows people to share information that may pertain to our health, our livelihood, whatever it may be. Your program also allows for people to tell their stories to the younger generation about what it takes to maintain or keep an interest in upward mobility and to make life a success for our families and our communities. I also want to just mention, since Ethel, since this is March is Women's History Month, and it provides an opportunity to honor the generations of trailblazing women and girls who have built our nation, shaped our progress, and strengthened our character as a people. Women such as yourself, Ethel, you graduated from Harvard Law School, one of the most prestigious universities in the country, and you also served in various capacities you've held. You also served as Navajo Nation Attorney General. The breadth and the depth of your contributions is remarkable. For that, thank you. Despite hardships, exclusion, and discrimination, Native American women have strived and sacrificed for equity and for equality. As women, they are stewards of the land, protection for family, and they lead the fight for social and economic justice.
Definitely. Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for that. I'm really honored, Shada. Um, and, I think what would be really great is to just hear a little bit about, um, your life growing up, and how that kind of shaped you and laid the foundation for your decision to run for president and your success in that capacity as well. We'd love to hear a little more about that story, if you don't mind sharing with us.
I think how I'll start, Ethel, is let me put some perspectives in order, and then I'll go into sharing some of the things that you have asked me to share with the people. Um, Dene women are the keepers in Navajo society. They care for the home, they care for the children, they are the first nurturers, and they preserve the culture and tradition. And they do much more than that. They are weavers, um, and so much more than that. Um, the Navajo people have been and always will be a matrilineal society. We represent our mother's first clans. The Navajo legend tells us that Changing Woman, a son of Lehi, the principal deity, represents the many roles that a Dene woman takes on in her lifetime, beginning with the rite of passage for young teenage girls, Kinalta. Dene women have always been at the core of social and economic control in their culture, and they occupy a strong position in Navajo life. They are revered matriarch of our family, extended family in our communities. I grew up, as a child, we lived in a pastoral life where we raised livestock, cattle, sheep. We planted every summer, every spring, we planted, we had food that brought food to our table. My family, I watched my family grow. I've watched my family struggle. They were always in a survival mode. I watched the women in our family, my grandmother, my mother. I watched them work hard to keep food on the table. I watched them sacrifice. I watched their resilience. I watched their adversities that they had to endure, but they were strong women. And I think it was through that time I began to develop how much I appreciated the way they grew up and what they had to endure. That kind of set me in a footing that not knowing at the time, but someday I would take on some challenging maybe careers or challenging jobs or things of that nature. So I started my political life at the state level. In 1988, I ran for state representative. So beginning in 1989, I served as New Mexico state representative for 10 years. It was during this decade that I've seen significant women be involved in and play a significant role in the political arena at all levels of government, whether it was a county commissioner, whether it was state representative or state senator or other elective offices. Even in the private sector, there were a number of women getting very involved. I remember listening to Anita Hill in New Jersey when she brought her sexual abuse to the forefront. In 1999 to 2006, I served as commissioner on the New Mexico Public Utility Commission. In 2007, Governor Bill Richardson appointed me to fill a vacant seat for New Mexico Senate District 22. I served in that capacity for 6 years. In 2015, I was again rewarded with a seat as commissioner on the New Mexico Public Utility Commission. My term ended at the end of 2018. I think that's where I left my path of being involved in state political state political office. Serving in state elective office was not always a piece of cake for me. Just as my childhood was never a piece of cake, the struggles were there, the hard work was there, and so it was in that same vein that holding elective offices at the state level was very challenging throughout the time that I was involved. The challenges I faced were many. As the only Native woman office holder, I had to break out of my traditional role where I was accustomed to local issues, local concerns, and now finding myself treading new paths. Those were very challenging, the challenging times that I endured and I experienced. There were times that I was subjected to stereotype of being not being able to be a hardball thinker, not having the negotiating skills that typifies big league politics, or what they call the good old boy network. So those are the things I had to go, the challenges that I went through. It took me some time to get acculturated to the state politics. I was seen as a representative for Native interests only. I had to prove to the people, I had to prove to my colleagues, I had to prove to advocates and others that I was there to be a representative for all New Mexicans, and that was challenging as well. And so nobody leads you to the water well of success. You have to find it yourself. And sometimes it requires trials and tribulations, overcoming adversities, not allowing yourself new paths, becoming ruts of complacency. You have to constantly keep sharpening your skills and be armed to weather rough storms, and make sure that your family and your health can withstand the rigors of any job that you have, that you hold. And those are things I experienced. And so I think all of that in my personal experience, all of those things led me to look towards something more challenging. I felt that this is not enough for me. This is not where I stop. I've got to do something more where I can make a difference in people's lives. So I was faced with I watched our Navajo Nation government leadership, and I saw a dire need to restore and rebuild our deteriorating leadership. I felt that I was very displeased in the way our leaders were running our government. There was a lack of concern for the people. There was just our leaders were not turning challenging opportunities into success. They were satisfied with just what they were doing, and that's yielding to power. And those are things that I think led me to think. I assessed myself. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? What's going through my mind? And I started thinking, should I run for Navajo Nation President? I started assessing my character, my abilities, everything about my personal persona, and I began thinking more about it, and with over 20 years of public policy experience as a legislator, as a public utility regulator, and being and shaping public policies, all of those, I felt prepared and qualified me to have a shot at running for Navajo Nation President. My decision to take this giant step was not an overnight decision. It took about a year for me to think, to fully assess myself, whether I had the credentials, the character, the mental and physical stamina, and the family support that I needed to challenge stepping into this, to an unknown. And so I also weighed in on my gender. So I consulted with some elders for advice to ensure I wouldn't break any moral code relating to centuries-old traditions applicable to Dene women's role for a position that under common wisdom has always belonged to a Navajo male. And so when I decided to run, when I announced and people became aware that I was really running for Navajo Nation President, it turned out that my gender became an issue by many, including Navajo women. And it may have been an ideal strategy used by my opponents to sway votes, because in any close race, when you cannot win on your own merits, you resort to scare tactics, untruths, and in order to maintain power. And I felt that was happening. But above all that, and of course the media elevated the gender issue a notch higher. And that gave more people to think about. It is not time, perhaps it really is not time for a woman to become a president. But regardless, my chances of possibly becoming the nation's female president brought to light gender equality and our cultural change. It caused a rethinking by many who never thought a Dene woman could get this far. It gave hope, it gave motivation and inspiration in the hearts of many, and especially the younger and industrial population, because the younger generation really came out to support me, and more educated people, more educated women really came out to support me running for this position. But throughout my experience running for Navajo Nation President, and of course, so many people, mostly male population, and those already holding offices in the various capacities within the Navajo Nation government, including the president and the Navajo Nation Council. They assumed that I was just going through the motions of running for president. They had no idea how serious I was. They had no idea how committed and dedicated I was, because in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit, I felt, every 4 years, we elect our Navajo Nation president. And every 4 years, they promised the people of what they would do and how they would assume their role and what their priorities would be. And those go by the wayside. They go by the wayside every 4 years. And that's something that really just hits my heart. And if I become the People's Navajo Nation president, I would play various roles. I would be their mother. I would be their teacher. I would be a caring person for them with such heartfelt feelings for them to ensure that I, as a female president, my role of being a president would be very, very different from what it's been for the many, many years that we have put our trust in having Navajo men be our president for all the years. But as I was faced with so much unfairness, challenging my gender, criticizing my gender, I could not disrespect that. I could not disrespect it whatsoever, because many still adhere to traditional core values in which it is tied back to our Navajo legend and centuries old beliefs that a woman is sacred and must be protected from danger. You don't question it, but you just respect it. Asana e bahastit. A woman is regarded at with higher respect. She's revered as in a very special way. And Eshi Astichne, what Shiyan Sida case Koko, my gender issue was very prevalent. Oshi Ahayu Sani do Stui Hatasi Sashidan Long Yan Sida case, Sanala Ebahastit, Digit Sada Allah Not Ani in Yelu Shakila. Though it's not that a woman is not qualified or capable or has the ability to assume that role. It's just that these other things that I have mentioned, Ishinyan Sita case gogo, that was for many, that was reasons they hesitated, but for others, it just gave them a chance and my thoughts, just as an excuse not to have a Navajo women assume that role. Because for those elders, they just have deep-seated core values, and our belief system just validates our relationship and our connectedness to our family, to relatives, and to our communities. A woman is a woman. We as women, we're much stronger. We are stronger mentally. We are stronger physically. We are stronger spiritually. And so, we just have to not criticize things that are posed as challenges for us to get to a level where we want to be. But I think for the presidency, those were things that I felt were some strong ideas and challenges that I had to deal with. I don't know if you want me to stop here and ask me other questions. If you want me to continue, I'll do that.
Yeah, no, this is all really, really wonderful. It's, my mom grew up similar to how you grew up, and it's just such a wonderful generation of just, like I think of my aunts and uncles and the work ethic that they have, and everything that they've done, they worked really hard to excel, and were successful in that regard. And I think it comes from that kind of an upbringing, really, really hard work, a lot of responsibility. And to me, that's a traditional upbringing. And I actually was raised where my mom grew up, and similarly, herding sheep and herding cattle, raising horses, and all of that, and hauling water. And I do think that is part of what helped set my path for success, and just, an inability to give up, because it was never really an option. So you don't learn how to do that. And also just similarly, like seeking out challenges, and being willing to take those on. So that really resonated strongly with me. I'm sure it's resonating strongly with many of our listeners. And it's just so neat to hear about your story as a lifelong public servant. And I'm so glad that you did choose to run for Navajo president, and broke at least one glass ceiling with respect to that. And certainly you were a role model for me, continue to be a role model for me. And so thank you for setting that path for our young women, and letting us know that is possible. Because they're, like you said, leadership at Navajo Nation, at least elected leadership, is so male dominated. Even on the council, even today, we only have 3 women who serve on council, and it's a very hard role for them. When I was Attorney General, there was only 1 woman on council for quite a period of time. And yes, and I did feel like she was treated differently because she was a woman. Her views seemed more easily dismissed, even though she had very good questions, they just wouldn't be answered. And so it's been really great to see her now on the Budget and Finance Committee. She did run for speaker, and I hopefully someday soon we will have a woman speaker. That would be really, really incredible. But Yeah, it's really interesting because we are coming up on a century leadership for our council. In 2023, that'll mark the 100th year under this style of governance. So hopefully, we'll have some change and more representative government. And like you mentioned before, in terms of thinking about your role and how you would govern as a woman and how that would be different, I do think that's missing in our government right now. It's so outward oriented, and there's not enough focus on like what's happening at home. Do our people have enough food to eat? Are our kids getting the right kind of education they need to be successful? Do our families have the basic things that they need in their homes, like access to electricity or running water, broadband? Do our families have the tools that they need to be successful if they're small business owners, or even if they're not small business owners and are just trying to get by, like having closer access to food and the things that they need to purchase. But that, there's always a lot of talk about these things, and it's very tied to economic development. But we just don't really see any change. It's been like this for a very long time. What were some of the key things that, when you were thinking about, or when you were running for president, what were some of the key things you thought needed to happen in our community to make the lives of our people better? Or was there a way that you felt that the government could govern differently that would make more of a difference in our people's lives?
One thing that doesn't remain as a priority for our government leaders is that families, women and children take the back seat. They leave those things up to women council to deal with, which is one of the things that for the longest time and for decades we were. If you're a woman and you hold a public office, you are regarded as weak. You are regarded as a caretaker for in taking on family issues, health issues, and so I've watched our council delegates at work, and I've watched our council women at work, and it is true. They belong to committees such as Health and Human Services, because that's what, for the longest time, for decades, that's what our role was expected to be, is to deal with social service issues, health issues, issues pertaining to women and children. And that was our responsibility to assume in public office. And as I watch women council delegates for many years, those are the committees they belong to. But hopefully things should change as women, as Dene women public office holders. You have to, first of all, you have to have the political acumen. You have to be fully immersed in your job. It has to be a commitment. You have to be dedicated to it. You have to understand in dealing with your colleagues, don't show your weaknesses. Don't cry and show your emotions in public. If you want to cry, go to your office, go to the bathroom and show your emotions, because that's what that's what dominates them. They love to see women show their weaknesses, women office holders, their own colleagues. And so have that political acumen, show your strength, be open-minded. I think someday down the line, yes, we will have a Navajo Nation president, a woman, the woman Navajo Nation president, but people are not ready for it right now. It might have to take an extraordinary woman. And what's extraordinary? What is it? Define extraordinary. But you have to have the love of public service. Do your research. Even if you belong to one committee, Health and Human Services, and you have your agenda coming up for your council session, research all of those issues. Get to know about it so that you can sit at your desk and debate whatever you want to debate. Challenge the status quo. Challenge your male colleagues that you know more than what they know. So you have to have the love of public service for these things to happen, for these characteristics to come out. And that epitomizes being a servant for the people. And your male colleagues don't want to be looked upon as a servant for the being a servant of the people, because that compromises their manhood. Don't have an ego. Your ego and having a chip on your shoulder and not being able to take criticism as a public servant, those will always be your downfall. So show your resilience, show your strength. Know your subject matters so that it gives you the ability to get up and debate issues. And it's those are things that are so immeasurable. For the younger generation, for so many women, we have women that are excellent lawyers. We have women that are excellent nurses. We have women that are holding so many good professional careers. We have a Navajo woman who is a Supreme Court Justice. I know her. I got to know her when she was a state representative from Montana. And she's a Navajo woman, but she still was able to conquer and hold an office in a state where there's so many conservative people, but she was able to do that. And we have so many women who are who are even firefighters, who are holding even male dominant positions. And so those are things that are just so remarkable to see. But for the younger generation, if you're looking to leap into a challenging job, you have to assess your qualities, assess your abilities, even look at your family. Is your husband supportive if you're married? If you're a single parent, are you able to have quality time and still be a nurturer of your children while you're holding a challenging position? Can your family, can your time sustain that you can still maintain your love and care for your family and raising your children? Those are all things. Will your husband support you? Will your boyfriend support you? Will they be a rock to you? Will they serve as being a rock for you? All of those are things that you have to. Are you prepared? Do you have enough experience? Are you confident? All of those things are, they must be considered before you really decide to take on the kind of jobs that some women are perhaps thinking about, and some women already have that. But just I was very fortunate to have served a number of years in as a state office holder, being on the Commissioner for Public Utility Commission, Public Regulation Commission. These are the kind of subject matters and the kind of issues that we had to deal with, that I had to deal with. Electric utilities, telecommunications, insurance, transportation, just fire marshal, all of these just very diverse matters that I had to deal with, and really helped me prepare to elevate into another position. And I think that's what it takes. Those are the things that can really help you succeed. And it can also bring on even more challenges to you as an individual, as a mother, as a wife. But at least you're in a comfort zone where you know how to go in and out of adversities, how to weather the storm when things get pretty rough. And these are just some ideas to share with those that are listening. And because I look at my own siblings, I look at my brothers and sisters, and I would think, what was it about me? What was my key drivers? What were my key drivers? Why am I different from them? Why are they not running for Navajo Nation President? Why are they not doctors and nurses and this and that? Why am I in Santa Fe and they're still in Crown Point? They're still holding on to the same job that they've had a decade ago. Why are not they challenging themselves? Those things used to enter my mind, but at the same time, you have to have respect for people. You have to have love and respect for your own family, your own siblings, and you don't make comparisons. You don't make judgments. There's just something in me, innate in me, that just drove me to a level that I was able to get to, and I'm very fortunate. It was such a truly an honor and a privilege to have been able to run for the nation's highest office, and that was the Navajo Nation President.
I have my little guy here.
Oh, he's a little shy today. We do have one question about the language requirement from Lean Bitsui. She wanted to know what you think about that requirement and if it should remain a requirement. Although I understand with the legislative action that after Christie's Cheatney's campaign, it's kind of left to the people to decide. Hold on,
Right. Well, I thought about it long and hard. I was very fortunate to spend, I think it was about a year, I worked for Peterson Zaw as his staff assistant. And I worked very closely with him. And I was very fortunate to get to know other prominent people, including women, who inspired me. Even my own aunts, they held professional positions, and they motivated me, inspired me, as did my grandmother and my mother. They were my inspiration. They were my teachers. They prepared me for where I'm at today and what I've become to today. And so I thought about, and even in my own experience running for Navajo Nation President, I was fortunate to be bilingual, to speak Navajo and to speak English, our second language. And when this Navajo language criteria came up, I thought it would be so unfair to not require a president to be able to speak Navajo, his or her own language. Perhaps I'm wrong in my judgment. History will determine whether I was wrong in my judgment or not, but I prefer, from my own experience, I prefer that anyone running for Navajo Nation president, that the highest office for the Navajo people, we still and will for another possibly decade, many of our Navajos will still speak both languages. We will still have elders out there in the most remote areas still living there another decade who speak only their own language. And it would just be shortchanging. It would just be so unfair that being able to speak Navajo is not a requirement for a person holding the highest office. But those are my thoughts. And at the same time, it's probably not fair to have a qualified person run for Navajo Nation office who's not able to speak Navajo, Dene language. I felt personally the council should have never passed that law that speaking Navajo language should be a requirement for anyone running for the highest office. I was disappointed. Perhaps I don't know, again, that judgment is there that I'm holding. You can agree with me or disagree with my judgment, but that's my judgment, that's my feeling. And But I know, in the last two elections, there have been Navajo women running for office. I think there were not in the previous election, but the one before. I think there were at least 3 Navajo women who ran for office, and I think all 3 of them were able to speak to the people in both languages, and I felt that was great. That's what's needed, and it's just respectful to the many elders we still have and will have for another decade who only speak English. I mean, only speak Navajo and don't understand English. And it's kind of it's just a really tough situation. I realize that times are different, times are changing. And that was my motto when I ran for Navajo Nation President. Times are changing, but when it came to our language and not making Navajo speaking a requirement, I was very disappointed.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing your perspective on that. We do have another question from Lean as well, about the purchase of the Washington DC townhouse by the nation, and just asking, what you feel about that in the middle of a pandemic, having that kind of outlay of funds for something like that. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but we did have a question in our chat on that.
Just a wonderful question. Another disappointment. We're the royalty monies and monies coming in from the government will start dwindling. We're not always going to have the level of finance that we now have to pay for services for our Navajo people and for the things that are important, education and health and things of that nature. Because the royalty funds, the monies that came from the royalty funds, all of those fossil fuel plants, utility plants are closing. And so we're spending, I get so disappointed because I see that our leaders, our elected officials, their priorities are sometimes, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to have to say it, screwed up. You're placing your priorities in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. We still have, even with the ARP funds, the stimulus money that Navajo Nation has received over the last 2 years, even after the last penny is spent, we still have a high number of families who have no running water, no electricity, no conveniences that some of us are able to enjoy. And that that office building paid for and purchased and paid for by our Navajo leaders is disappointing. It's a convenience for them, just like having 2 jets to travel around in. Those are conveniences. But the fact still remains that we have families out there whether it's in remote areas or in Crown Point or in Cayente or Tuba City, Shiprock, we still have now a high number of families of our Navajo elders, our veterans, who live in rundown homes, no electricity, no running water. And this is 2022. And so it is very disappointing. And I think that was my reason for risking my own political reputation to run for president. It's just, when we are presented with an opportunity with funding, they seem to be dispersed in the wrong areas. And there's still going to be a digital divide on the Navajo Nation because of barriers such as right-of-ways. We should be going to Washington and asking Congress to make some waivers for right-of-ways so that our people are getting the electricity that they need, the broadband that they need. These right-of-ways has been a barrier, and the BIA government has just sat on it and never bothered to challenge how our people's livelihood could be better. But instead they sit on and not wanting to push for changes with these barriers that present themselves to us. And for the next decade and beyond, we're still going to have families suffering from no electricity, from no conveniences that so many of us enjoy to this day.
Well, we are coming up on our hour, and we have a question from Tabitha Manuelito, and it kind of builds off of what you were just saying now. And she asked, Mrs. Lovejoy, did you think about running for Navajo Nation president again? She says, I remember being in Window Rock. It was a night of high emotions and hope. You rattled the opposition. I felt change was coming, and still do. So, what do you have to say to Tabitha?
Well, first of all, I want to just thank her from my heart for feeling that way. And I think so many younger people who supported my candidacy held so much hope. They felt that a change was needed, and felt that finally there's going to be a change in leadership at the top. Well, it didn't happen, but I wish I had the power to go back to being a younger person. I wish I could go back 6, 7, 8 years. But I want to see, I have hope that someday we will have a Navajo Nation president. Maybe not during my lifetime. I'm up in age. I'm semi-retired, partially retired. I'm a lobbyist for Navajo Technical University and Institute of American Indian Arts. I lobby. I'm the New Mexico lobbyist. And so I'm partially semi-retired and enjoying looking back at the political bubble I was floating in, and now I don't have the level of stress. I don't have the level of health issues that that I was neglecting to pay attention to all these years, because I put people first. I put my love for public service first, and I neglected many things. But you know, there's still hope. If we have, I know we're going to be voting for a Navajo Nation president again, whether it's the incumbent or people are thinking of a new person, and there's at least a woman or two who are thinking about running. All of the things that I brought up, it's not a piece of cake, and so it will happen, but who knows when. And thank you for all of you who truly, truly put your faith in me and supported me. I still love you every day. To this day, I still love you and appreciate you.
Well, I was also, my family was a big supporter, so I'm certainly starstruck here, and very thankful to have you with us today.
Well, you, Ethel, you could be one of them.
Oh
You
boy.
could be run for Navajo. You got the law behind you.
Oh, definitely something to think about.
Yes, it
Yeah.
can be done.
Yeah.
It's possible.
We definitely
Just
need
let me know. I'll be your campaign manager.
Oh. Oh dear. I may hold you to that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Lynda. It's such an honor to have you here and to hear your wise words and inspiring words. And yeah, it's so wonderful to have a role model like you, and to see you continue to do wonderful things, you know, advocating for our tribal colleges and making sure our kids have incredible educational opportunities at home and close at hand. So thank you for all that you continue to do, and for being with us today.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it and appreciated it.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Yes. Go on that.
Bye-bye. Go on that.